In Romeo and Juliet, William Shakespeare famously wrote, "What is in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet." What Shakespeare is trying to say is that a name doesn't give something meaning, its character traits do. Not to put down Shakespeare, but here in Iowa, life is a little sweeter, knowing that one of the most famous apple varieties, the Red Delicious, was once called something else, the Hawkeye. That's right, the quintessential Red Delicious apple variety, known the world over for its deep crimson skin and mildly sweet taste, was first discovered right here in the Hawkeye State. The origin story of the Red Delicious is one of persistence and triumph, and offers a lesson of the importance of local foods. So join me today on a field trip to Ditmars Orchard in Council Bluffs, where we'll get to the core of the matter, how apples are grown and what they mean to us as Iowans. Sometimes you don't know the value of something even when it's growing right in front of your very eyes. At first, that was the case for Jesse Hyatt, an early settler who put down roots in Iowa in 1856, just 10 years after it became a state, and planted an apple orchard in Madison County. Back then, orchards were being planted just about everywhere in the United States, but surprisingly, apples weren't really grown to be eaten. Many apple varieties in the 1800s lacked the flavor we know today, but that didn't matter too much then. See, the fruit was primarily used to make drinking cider, which at the time was believed to be more sanitary than water. Now, the story with Hyatt goes something like this. He was walking in his orchard one day and he noticed a young apple tree that was out of place. All the apple trees that he had planted were in neat rows, but this defiant one that he did not intentionally plant stood apart. He kept trying to kill the young tree, but it kept growing back, so Hyatt eventually gave up and let it be. Then, a few years later, the tree began producing apples unlike any of the rest. When Hyatt tasted them, he realized that those apples were actually, dare I say it, delicious. Hyatt knew then that he had something special, so he named the apple the Hawkeye after his adopted home state and entered it into a national apple contest. The apple won the whole thing, and Hyatt sold the marketing rights to a nursery in Missouri that renamed the apple Delicious before marketing it at the 1904 World's Fair, after which the apple exploded in popularity globally. After Hyatt's chance discovery, and by the turn of the 20th century, apples became one of Iowa's biggest crops. The state was second in apple production in the entire United States, trailing only behind Michigan. But after a disastrous freeze knocked over 80% of Iowa's orchards in 1940, the fruit never regained its place as one of Iowa's top crops. Despite the loss, Iowa's storied history with apples hasn't been forgotten by the farmers who operate the some 140 orchards that exist in the state today. Lyle Ditmars, who owns Ditmars Orchard, says when people come to pick apples at the orchard, it's like the Hallmark effect. You know that warmth you get in your heart when you read a birthday card or watch a holiday movie? You get that at Ditmars Orchard too. Rows of lush trees, as far as the eye can see, conjure up a special feeling.
It's nice for people to come out and spend time as a family. You know, our motto here is that, it's the place where families go to be together. And that's what it is. People can come out, they can be together, they can do things that were related to agriculture, related to orchard activities, pumpkins, flowers, strawberries.
When the scenic orchard was established on a whim in 1994, it was more of a family project than a business. And now, it's one of the largest orchards in the state.
I had never had an orchard, had never worked at an orchard, had never planted a fruit tree, but I had 4 children, and I just thought it'd be a fun thing to do as a family.
If you're suddenly feeling inspired to start an orchard of your own, just remember that apples aren't something you grow when you're in a hurry. It takes about 5 years for a standard-sized apple tree to start producing fruit. If you're in the 7th or 8th grade now, the trees that were planted when you were learning multiplication tables are just now reaching maturity. Think about how much you've learned and grown in the meantime. And if you're thinking that you can just take any old apple seed that you saved from lunch, plop it in some soil and water it, you may be disappointed with the end result. See, apple trees grown from seed aren't usually what you call true to type. Juvenile apple trees are genetically different from their parents. And that means if you plant a seed from a Red Delicious apple, the tree that grows won't be a Red Delicious. How exactly do you grow delicious, crisp, and sweet apples then? Let's rewind to the end of winter. It's late February, and the bitter cold is starting to release its grip as the days get longer. This time of year is quiet at the orchard, but crucial for growing apples. Without their leaves and fruit, apple trees may look lifeless in the winter, but they are thriving. Those trees have entered a period called dormancy, which is when they hit pause on growing to conserve their energy for when weather conditions improve. Before the trees break dormancy, it's the perfect time to start grafting. And what is grafting exactly? Since you can't grow an apple from just any seed, as I mentioned earlier, grafting is the special process farmers and horticulturists use to produce all of the varieties of apples we love. To graft a tree, they'll start with something called a rootstock. This rootstock will serve as the base of the new tree and is either developed from an apple seed or a branch cut from an existing apple tree. While the rootstock won't be part of the tree that produces fruit, it is carefully chosen for certain genetic characteristics, allowing farmers to control how big the tree gets and how much fruit it produces, as well as protect the tree from various diseases. Once the rootstock has been planted, the farmer will cut off the top and attach a branch cut from another apple tree, one that grows the farmer's preferred kind of apple, say a Gala apple tree. In a few weeks, if all goes well, you'll start to see the first bit of growth in the form of buds at the top of the new tree. Pretty cool, huh? Meanwhile, mature apple trees are slowly preparing for spring all on their own. At the tip of every tree's branch is a potential fruit bud that's been there since the previous summer. For buds to blossom into flowers, the plant needs a certain number of chill hours. Yes, that's an actual technical term that refers to the amount of time trees spend in certain temperatures in the winter. These chill hours give a tree its best chance to reliably produce quality fruit.
We don't worry about usually December, January, February, but we start watching the temps real close in March and April. Because if it gets too warm too quick and they accumulate degree days, which is the amount of heat, then that triggers the trees to go into the bloom stage. And the closer you get to bloom, the more they're vulnerable to a freeze.
If it gets warm too quickly, and then there's an unexpected cold snap, that can spell doom.
Once you get close to blossom, which could be up to 10 days before they start to bloom, maybe 15, the real temperature we're worried about is below 28.
Around the start of spring, one dormancy is broken. Leaf tips will begin to emerge and form a tight cluster that surrounds the blossom buds. Below the largest bud, at the tip of the branch, other secondary blossom buds begin to develop too. By mid-spring, these blossoms are in full bloom. Bright bursts of pink that signal to bees and other insects that they're ready for pollination. Speaking of flowers, you know that Shakespeare quote I referenced earlier? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet? Apples belong to the rose family, just as pears, peaches, and cherries do. The plant kingdom is vast and interesting. As the blossoms begin to wither away in the May heat, we'll know if the pollinators have done their job when we see fruitlet. The starts of small fruit begin to form. Cross-pollination between different trees' flowers is essential. If the pollen from the male part of the flower can't get to the female part of another flower, the fruit will likely be malformed or won't develop at all. If pollination happens as it should, fruitlets will transform into a larger fruit over the late spring and through to summer. The people who grow apples are just as determined as the mighty fruit itself. Farmer Ditmars says that there's always some sort of challenge when it comes to growing apples, from hail damage to pesky beetles to torrential rain. But what matters is how you respond to setback.
They need water to set the fruit. Not really to set it, but to grow and to develop size. And this year we've had quite a bit of moisture until recently. If they see that there's not enough water or feel there's not enough water, then they'll actually start dropping fruit in order for them to survive.
Once the apples reach their full size in the late summer, they start to ripen. Each of Ditmars' 30 or so apple varieties is ready for picking in its own time, which could be as early as the beginning of August or as late as the end of October. You can't rush good flavor. And when it comes to flavor, each apple variety has a unique taste. While you've heard of more popular varieties like Red Delicious and Gala, the best-selling apple at Ditmars is the Jonathan apple. It's got a bold flavor with a refreshing balance of sweetness and tartness.
I like a lot of them. I like Goldens, I like Reds, I like Panovas, I like Crimson Crisp, I like Jonathan.
No matter which variety you like, there's a certain satisfaction that comes with picking your own at Ditmars Orchard, where every apple is hand-harvested.
All of them are good if you get them when they're fresh.
You're not imagining it. The apple you're eating straight from the farm often tastes fresher, even sweeter than what you may have gotten at the grocery store. Apples have a long shelf life, which means that sometimes the apple you get from the store could have been in cold storage for months before it arrives on your plate. Grocery stores provide access to the foods we love year-round, but sometimes that means flavor can get lost in the process. Farmer Ditmars likes to tell one story of a customer who came to the orchard and said he'd eat any apple except a Red Delicious. The customer didn't care for the taste of Red Delicious apples as he had elsewhere. Ditmars had just been out in the field picking red delicious apples, and he handed one to the customer.
He was saying he didn't like them, and as it turned out, it was about the time that ours were ripe. And I had a couple behind the counter, and I gave him, I said, here, try this one. Tell me if you like it. And I didn't tell him what it was. He took a bite out and says, man, this is good. What is it? I said, well, it's red delicious.
When you do visit Ditmars Orchard, or any other orchard in Iowa, you might as well fill your basket to the brim. Apples stay fresh for weeks when you put them in your refrigerator's crisper drawer. So just think of all the dishes you can whip up. They aren't just for cutting up into slices to crunch on as a snack, though there's certainly nothing wrong with that. On a chilly fall morning, what's better than an apple crumb muffin, still warm from being pulled out of the oven? Made with whole grain flour and grated apples, both rich in fiber and decked out with the cinnamon sugar topping, a crumb muffin can both be nutritious and tasty. Plus, recipes that call for grated or chopped apples can help cut down on food waste. Not every apple is going to look perfect, but that doesn't necessarily mean that apples are inedible. My time with Farmer Ditmars taught me that if a hailstorm blows through and slightly bruises some of your apples, well, that's just another reason to make applesauce. Damaged crops present a financial risk to farmers that is sometimes too great to bear. It's one reason why the number of acres dedicated to apple orchards has decreased considerably in the last 30 years in this area. But there is something we can all do to help. When we visit local apple orchards with our families and friends, we're supporting farmers as they not only grow apples, but also a community. Orchards, many of which are pick your own, help give a community its character and provide a chance for us all to come together and enjoy a fun afternoon out in the field. Here at Ditmars Orchard, you can see what else is growing throughout the year. Grab a dozen eggs, or say hello to Eddie the goat, or Norma, or Trixie, or Earl and Max. While the goats deserve their time in the spotlight, don't forget about the behind-the-scenes talent. When we visit a local farm or go to the farmer's market, we enjoy the unique honor of meeting the people who grow the food that fuel us. Because Iowa-grown apples don't have to travel as many miles to reach you, they don't need to be as durable as the ones that are shipped in from out of state. That gives local farmers a chance to tinker with different apple varieties that are perhaps a little more delicate, but are big on flavor. And fewer miles traveled means the vehicles transporting the apples don't emit as much gas. As a result, we can breathe better quality air not just on the farm, but in our own backyard. And finally, local farms create job opportunities and support the economy. The money we spend on homegrown apples can then be paid forward to other local businesses and our neighbors. We all have a greater impact than we realize. That's why schools across the Midwest participate in the Great Apple Crunch each year to celebrate local farmers, healthy students, and strong communities. So if your school is participating in the Great Apple Crunch this year, remember, your one small crunch plays a part in ensuring that there are plenty of Iowa-grown apples to crunch on for years to come. With every bite, we seal the legacy of the red delicious apple that started it all, or as I like to call it, the Hawkeye.